Hi, everyone. Hope you had a nice 3-day weekend. Today, we're going to get into the recording of your material for your segment. You've done your brainstorming, you've come up with the people that you are going to interview, your questions, and the B roll. There's still several people that have not done that yet. You have to do that before you start to move on and do these recordings. One of the first things you need to do is you need to go get your interviews, and you want to make sure you contact the person ahead of time. Don't just show up with a camera and expect the person to do an interview. There's a few exceptions. If it's like an event going on, uh, let's say like a job fair or something, or maybe you're at a sporting event, sometimes you might not be able to get people ahead of time, but still, you should try to figure out who you want to interview and kind of give them a heads up that you're going to be there and like to get an interview with them. You can contact people through email or give them a call. That would be best. Some people may have to just ask them in person, but don't expect them to do it right then and there. Okay, so there's a few exceptions here and there, but for probably what you guys are all doing, you just don't just show up with the camera. Uh, when you do shoot your interview, you need to make sure that you shoot level with the face. Okay, you don't want to be shooting up at the person or down at the person. You want to be a neutral feelings about the person, because when you shoot from down below, remember, you're making the person look more powerful. If you're shooting from above and shooting down at the person, you're going to make them look more weak. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure they look off camera a little bit. So what you're going to do is basically I'm going to look a little bit off screen, just a little bit off camera and stuff when I'm talking. That's what you want the person to do. You don't want a side profile shot. You don't want them looking straight at the camera. Okay. You want it, and remember, you want more space in front of the person than the direction they're looking for. You are not going, you're not going to set it up so there's more space behind them. It just doesn't look right. So that's what you want to do with that. You want to make sure you have proper headroom. Okay. You don't want their head being cut off. You also don't want to have a big, huge space up there where you could put the Eiffel Tower or anything. You need to make sure that you have a little bit of space up there, but not too much. Make sure that when they answer the questions, that we get what you asked. We're not going to hear you at all asking questions. We should never hear you asking questions on camera during your segments. So what you're going to do is, if they don't answer where we get an idea of what they're asked, you need to ask them to do it again. Okay. You ask them, what was it like to participate in the state tournament? Then you don't want them to say, it was great. I had a fun time with everything, because I have no idea what they're talking about. So ask them to reword that with the question in there. Well, the state tournament was great. I had a great time. Da, 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 okay. You want to make sure that after you ask the question and they start talking, you leave some space. They leave enough blank space in there, a second or two of silence. Don't. Sometimes they're nervous. And they're going to start talking over you as you're finishing up the question, and you don't want to do that. And also at the end, when they're done answering, pause for a second or two and don't just jump in with the next question, because you're going to be it's going to be hard to edit that if you actually want to use that part. And you're probably going to end up only using parts of what they say. You're going to kind of chop things up, because most time they talk too long, and it's going to be too long for the segment that you're doing. Um, don't be afraid to ask them to redo a question. Let's say they just start fumbling up and that doesn't look good. Yes, just kind of stop them. Say, okay, you start off good, but let's go ahead, just do that again, and then ask them the question again and have them answer. And usually they'll do a little bit better. Sometimes some people ramble on and on and on and on. They have good material in there, but they ramble so much. Sometimes with the way they talk, you may not think you're going to be able to edit parts of what they say. It won't sound right. So maybe ask them to reword the answer. You just ask them again, tell me a little more concise, because your segments, tell them it's only going to be 2 minutes long. And if they talk for 30 seconds, that's a quarter of the segment, which is going to be way, way too long. You'll probably also want to get B-roll when you do your interviews. If you're getting someone, let's say like Mr. Marcinek, and you're interviewing him and he's talking about something about being a principal. Get some stuff of B-roll of him being principal in his office. Maybe later on you can catch some stuff, maybe in the, him doing lunch duty or hall duty, but some stuff that's going to take place there. Go ahead and get that B-roll done and over with. You want to get the B-roll done during this week too. You're doing interviews, plus you're doing your B-roll. Now, with B-roll, make sure you shoot more B-roll than you think you need and a lot longer. I wanted a list of only like 15. You may end up shooting 25, 30 pieces of B-roll, and that's great. And always shoot longer than what you think you're going to need. I mean, even myself, Mr. Gloff, have some issues with this. One time, Mr. Gloff and I were working on a segment. He shot some B-roll, and when he saw the edited product, he's like, "Why did you not put this piece in there? Why'd you put that B-roll?" I said, "Because it wasn't long enough for what we were doing and what we were explaining." And like, let's say, for example, like we have in the instructions for this assignment, let's say you're shooting a counselor with a student. Okay, so shoot some B-roll, maybe 10, 12 seconds of just a side shot of the two of them talking. Then move the camera, maybe do a little bit more of an angle so it's more looking at the counselor. Shoot that B-roll. Maybe move it so it's looking more at the student. Okay, now maybe do an over-the-shoulder shot from behind the student so we can see a little bit of their head and shoulder as we can see the counselor. Do lots of stuff. Move around, get varying shots. A lot of times I have this problem with B-roll at a sporting event. They just stick the camera in one spot and you see all these jump cuts because it's all from the same angle. Move yourself around, get lots of interesting B-roll and lots of close-ups. Remember, television is a close-up medium, so we want to be able to get close and see what's going on. Not a lot of far shots. You may need to do your stand-up now. Your stand-up is your introduction and your closing. For this project, we want to see you do a stand-up. Some of these things you can do later on. You'll be able to do next week after you kind of get an idea where the story is going, how it's going to be put together. Sometimes if it's an event that's going on right now, you may need to shoot at least your opening and your closing right then. You could do the middle stuff in the middle, the voiceover. We're not going to see you. You could do that later, but you may need to shoot the your beginning and end. So think about when you're going to go shoot, if you may need to do that, how you can say it, where it could be, it will work okay, no matter what the outcome is. Again, let's just say you're doing a basketball game. You have some sort of introduction about, tonight, this team plays that team and maybe their records, and then you can go into what happened in the game. Okay. And then you could even record two endings, one that for we won and one for if we lost, and then you could edit that stuff in together. If you don't need to do this right now, you don't have to. But if you do shoot your stand-up now, your opening and closing, later on when you shoot your the voiceover stuff in the middle, you'll want to use the same camera setup, the same kind of microphone, maybe even go into the same type of an area so the same ambient noise is there. And it's going to make it sound a lot better. Don't just run into the radio studio and record because it's going to sound so much different. And then also you need to make sure you dress professionally. For this project, you have to be dressed professionally. Guys, that means wearing a tie, button-up shirt, tie. Girls, you want to be wearing a nice top. So that's what we want you to look like. And for you're the reporter, so you can look at the camera. Okay. Everyone else, we're kind of just, off to the side because we're kind of just peering in on what they're saying. But you are talking to the audience, so you want to be looking at the camera as you are doing this. Okay, so you've gone out, you've shot your B-roll, you shot your interviews, and maybe you shot your stand-ups or not. You need to get that done this week. When you get back, what you want to do is you want to move the footage over to your drive. Okay, you're going to put, if you did most of you probably going to be using, most of you people are going to be home, so you're going to be using your cell phones. So go ahead, upload those to your Google Drive. Then you'll want to go to Horizon and then download those into your H drive. Start a new folder in your H drive so everything is nice and together for you. Like and name that project whatever your segment is. National Honor Society, Green Club, Wrestling State, whatever it is you have. Go ahead and name that. That way, later on, you can find this stuff easier. Then within that project folder, you want to put a bunch of subfolders. Remember, you want good organization with this. Have one for raw footage or even just raw footage interviews, because you also want B-roll in a separate so you can find these things easier. Have another one for your lower thirds. Have one for your graphics if you have them. Later on, we do stuff, maybe audio. And speaking of your interviews, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, always start off with, no matter who it is, even if you know the person, have them start off at the beginning, have them say their name and their title for what it is you're working on, and also spell their name. Always do this. Plus, if you use one of the cameras that we have, one of our ENG cameras, it's good because then you can set the audio levels. But you want them to do that because later on you're going to forget. And even then, if you know the person, they might have some different spelling of a name. You want to make sure that you spell the name correctly when you're, when you're making the lower thirds. Watch your interviews, kind of figure out what you're going to be using, and even make a rough outline of how this segment's going to go. You have your intro, maybe what you're going to discuss in that, your stand-up, that maybe goes into an interview, what part, and just so you have an idea of where you're going to go with this in the editing process. Then what you also want to do while you're still in Horizon is in the X drive for CPTV, there is a folder, and it's called Premiere Template Basic 2021. You have to scroll down some. And what you want to do is copy that whole entire folder over to your H drive. Normally, we give you this big, huge template folder. It's called portable hard drive material. It has all the different things you need for everything. The problem is, if we copy that over, it would, first of all, take forever, but then also you wouldn't have enough space to actually edit anything because it's so huge. This Premiere template, all it is just your template for your video file, which you need to use, and then also for your lower third, has the information there and the graphic and everything. So do those things and then stop. Okay, don't go into the editing process. We're going to do all that starting next week. Some of your fellow classmates who are in person, they're trying to jump the gun and they wanted to do their interviews. Some even schedule these interviews, last week. And we're taking you step by step through this so you kind of understand the process. And, we want to make sure you do these things right, because we don't want you to do it, find out you did it wrong, and then you have to do it again. So shoot your B-roll, shoot your interviews, maybe your stand-up, get the material down into your drive, into your H drive, make a new folder, organize it with folders, and copy that template folder over. And then that's it. Go ahead, stop. And we're going to pick up next week. We're going to go into Premiere. We're going to show you how to do things in there, and we're going to start putting together our first project. Okay? So think about this. Think about what you want to do. And if you have any questions, just reach out and let me know.